Um, all right. So you ready to get stuck in?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay. So my first question is really just, can you give me a bit of a backstory about who you are and what you've done and how you tie into this whole topic of financial abuse?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So my name's Jozica Kutin, and I'm a senior researcher at RMIT University, but also at the Victoria Law Foundation. I actually got into this topic because my research work at RMIT involved areas of financial education and building people's financial capabilities. And we were talking a lot about women and money. So my boss there, Professor Rosalind Russell, just did this big survey of Australian women and their attitudes and ideas, confidence, and all those kinds of things to do with money. And we found out an interesting fact in there, and that was that 23% of women had a secret bank account.
Mm.
And we're also doing work with other women's organisations around the issues to do with financial abuse. And for me, it really kicked off when, this whole issue, I can kind of understand it with older generations that have kind of grown up in a more traditional way of being. Like my own parents, my older relatives kind of get that, old school, old fashioned, the man decides everything, and you kind of get it. But then I came in across it with some of my peers, like friends my age, and I thought, hang on, what's going on? We're university educated. Surely we know better than being in relationships like this. But what actually really shocked me, and was the first time hearing about it at my friend's 50th birthday party at Noosa, was chatting to her daughter about her relationship. And she was 20 and she was working two jobs. She was paying all the bills and she was also paying off her boyfriend's Centrelink debt. And I just thought, that's not right. That's not fair. So for me, it really was about, okay, well, why is this still happening? Why is it's still happening amongst older women? It was kind of a little bit understandable, but still shocking in this day and age. But more so, I was shocked by why it was happening in relationships with younger people.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand why that would be the case. I'm shocked to hear it, even just hearing you tell me now.
Mm.
Um, so, going on from that, can you just give me a brief explanation of what you think financial abuse is based on your studies and experience with the topic?
Yeah, sure. So financial abuse really involves, like, people talk about it in terms of three components, right? So there's that financial exploitation, uh, financial control, and also what we call financial sabotage, right? So, and when we think about financial abuse, we also sometimes the term economic abuse is also used somewhat interchangeably, but slightly different. But day-to-day things, we all see it as the same thing. So it can be about controlling your money or stopping you from having access to your money, but it also can be about your economic resources. So in particular for young people, it's their phone, their access to their computer or the internet or Wi-Fi at home, their car, and any other resources that they might have. Uh, but it's also about interfering with your ability to build up your own economic resources or your own financial resources. So having a job, having the job that you want to do, being able to study the course that you want to study, not what somebody else thinks is the right course or the wrong course for you to do. So there are those other aspects to it as well. So it's not just about controlling your access to money. It could also be using you for your money or for your assets or for your resources.
Yeah, definitely. I can see that. I really wanted to ask as well, like, you've already sort of explained, I suppose, though, what the moment was that kind of led you to pursue this research.
Yeah.
So, going on from that, I do really want to ask, where do you think financial abuse is more prominent? And what does the typical victim kind of look like to you?
Yeah, these are really good questions, and people ask these things all the time. And so, when we looked at some Australian data, we found actually the peak for people experiencing financial abuse or economic abuse was in their, the people in their 40s, 40 to 49, 50 to 59. And it's roughly about 20%, of the population. But when you also look at that age, you also realize that that is the age that people most commonly, um, experience or go through divorce or separation. They're still bringing up children, perhaps, and therefore maybe reliant on one wage. And they're also been in relationships longer or marriages longer. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't occur at the other end of the spectrum. So when we look at much older groups, older people, we see that it occurs there as well, what we call, elder abuse or elder financial abuse. And often the perpetrator is not the person's partner, but it might be their adult child or a carer or a new person, and it might be a man or a woman. And then it's also happening at the other end of the spectrum between young people. So it happens across all ages. But when you ask, well, what's the typical victim look like? It can be anybody. So just in those brief examples that I gave you, it can be the university educated person who's been financially controlled by her university educated partner who has come from a very well-to-do family. It can be people who are on low incomes, teenage mums or young mums. It can be women who run their own businesses. It can also be um, men or women with disabilities are also vulnerable to financial abuse. So it's really, the question really is who can fall in love, right? So anyone who can actually also be a victim of financial abuse or other forms of abuse in a relationship.
Mm. I think the hard thing for people to kind of understand is how it can affect so many people at the same time, so many different types of people. In which case, I kind of feel that we need to explain a little bit, particularly for listeners, how people get themselves into these situations. Like, what are the signs of someone being financially abusive in a relationship?
Yeah. Look, I think that following on a bit from that other conversation, there are some of those key factors that make people more vulnerable to financial abuse than perhaps other people. And that's often when there's an imbalance of power in a relationship. And that might be because of one person earns more than the other person, one person's more educated than the other person, or one person is more dependent on that person because of illness, disability, or something like that. So when we look at those other factors or the things that people need to watch out for in terms of is this financial abuse, I think often the first part of that is about that gut feeling that this isn't quite right or this isn't fair. And one of the most common things that people report in terms of financial abuse is not having access to financial information. So if you're just, starting dating and, relationships have started, well, obviously you don't expect to have access to that other person's financial information. But when you're in a serious relationship and the other person is hiding information from you, is making decisions that can affect both your future and both your financial security, then that's a really significant red flag in terms of financial abuse and financial control. Other things, in particular with young people, are more, in a way, more subtle, and it's kind of like, oh, can you help me out? And, could you lend me $100? I need to, just tie me over. And, I bought you that great present. And can't you help? Oh, yeah, I'll help you out. And so there's those emotional things there as well. So we kind of, you're in a relationship, you want to be able to help the other person out, you know, and because you believe and you hope that they're going to help you out as well when you get stuck or you need a bit of assistance. So what gets mixed in all of that is this whole notion of love and what does love mean and how do you express love and caring for the other person. I think some of the other critical things to watch out for is that whenever anybody puts a bit of pressure on you to make some kind of financial decision that you're not quite sure about. So that might be, oh, look, let's go and get this, big new TV and we'll put it on hire purchase, or we'll put it on your credit card and we'll both pay it off. Or, I need a hand with, I need someone to come with me to the car yard so I can get my new car. And so whenever your gut's kind of telling you, oh, this doesn't feel quite right, that is the red flag that perhaps you need to I guess pause and stop and just say, look, I need to think more about this or investigate more into this before I make any decisions about that.
Yeah, great advice. Just one thing as well with your microphone, I think it's catching the
Oh,
collar of your shirt. So if you
that's
just
so
hold it away.
annoying. I can't hear it, but you can hear it.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fixed it, I
Yep.
think.
Okay. Oh, that's really bad.
It's okay. That's a lot better.
You'll have
So
to edit that out. I'm sure you will.
yeah, it's all right. We can sort it in post production. Um, so I did want to ask as well, with the coronavirus pandemic, what kind of impact have you seen this having on financially abusive relationships? Is it worsening the situation or is it making it better? What kind of impact?
Well, it's a really interesting question again, and I think that with the lockdown situation, it can go, I think, either two ways. So when we were doing part of our research with young people during this lockdown, we were interviewing young people, just like this over Zoom. Um, we also asked what impact has the lockdown had on their relationships. And what we noticed was that people were becoming more financially dependent on their partner that they were living with because they were losing their jobs. So um, and that's kind of a line that you need to tread a bit carefully so that you don't feel as though when somebody's helping you out that you no longer have the right to have discussions about money or contribute to financial decisions just because you're not bringing money into the situation. It can, of course, be a lever for people, like for young people, to actually end the tenancy and move back home. So they actually might have saved themselves or found a way to exit that relationship. However, with older people or older cohorts of people where they are in abusive relationships, what they've found is that this lockdown period just intensifies and magnifies all those issues that might have been kind of dispersed, throughout time and now are becoming much more intense. Um, so there has been a financial buffer for families with, the mortgage freeze and the rental freezes and things like that for businesses, and some people being able to access JobKeeper, so that might have helped a little bit. But it's that intensity and that can exacerbate the problems that are already there. Sometimes we think that, if we just spend time together, it'll solve things. But sometimes I think intensity just magnifies the smaller problems that were already there.
Definitely. I can
Mm.
definitely see that being the case. Um, so, what can you do if you're in a financially abusive relationship? What's one of the first things? If you could walk us through the process, that'd be great.
Yeah, I guess, look, the first thing that people experience is actually the realization that that's been happening to them, right? And it would be foolish of me to then say, well, just go and have a conversation with your partner about it, right? Because it's probably got to the point where these conversations about money haven't been able to be had, either probably from the get-go, from the very beginning, or for quite some time. So I think the most sensible thing to do is, if people are concerned about that they reach out to either a trusted friend or family member, someone that they know that's not going to be judgmental, that's not going to say to them, "Oh, how did you get yourself in this situation?" But it's going to be supportive. And then there are a lot of online tools and resources and helplines that people can access, such as 1-800-RESPECT, and the various counselling lines. And if people have found that they've um, come into a lot of debt, or typically what I saw happening with the young people that I interviewed, they become, financially entangled with this person. They buy a product for them or sign up as guarantor for a loan for them. They smash the house, they leave, they don't pay the rent, they're not paying their debts, and this poor young person is left with $10,000, $5,000 debt, right? So there are financial counsellors that are available for free to anybody in Australia to try and help them sort out those debt problems, especially if they're a result of financial abuse or an abusive relationship. So I think you have to tread carefully, and then I think it's important to get that support to make a really good plan to leave the relationship, because a lot of people develop strategies to contain the situation so as not to inflame it, because they're already feeling, scared about confronting that person on those issues.
Mm. Would you say that majority of financial abuse situations already exist in a domestic violence situation? So it's already an abusive relationship. This is just another piece of the manipulation tool.
Yeah, that's exactly. I think it's a very powerful manipulation tool, and it's very powerful because um, you everyone has to deal with money, right? So you just can't eliminate it. It's not black and white thing like physical abuse or sexual violence or things like that. And it's kind of like can fly under the radar a bit like emotional abuse, but I think we're still a bit more aware of that than we are in terms of financial abuse, because we can very easily be convinced like, well, I think this is the best way for us to manage these things. And you've proven yourself not to be a good money manager, and it's best that I do everything, or why won't you help me out in this situation? I'll help you out in the future. So it is something. And I think with all those abusive behaviors, it's very subtle. It creeps up on you. It starts with small behaviors at the very beginning till it becomes something that is actually quite disempowering and a danger to your own physical safety and definitely your financial safety.
Mm, for sure. So to round it off, last question. Based on your research, how do you think we can address financial abuse as a community? And where would you like to see these kinds of conversations started in particular?
I think that as a community, we need to unravel the issues and bring these issues more to light. So obviously, it's just a convoluted way of saying we need to raise the awareness of this issue. But we need to raise awareness about it in all its different forms. So we see a lot about elder abuse. We see a lot about women being financially controlled and not getting, getting a very small allowance that they have to manage the household with. But we don't see the other stories and the other ways in which it can occur. And we certainly don't hear about young adults that have experienced it, partly because, they haven't got huge houses, they haven't got fancy cars, and it's usually not a huge amount of money. So, but I also think that even though women are the majority of victims, and and a lot of the work is focused on improving women's the financial capabilities or their financial skills, ensuring or teaching women to be financially independent. I actually think we need to do more work and have more conversations with young men and partners about, look, these are the different ways that we manage money in relationships. It's the same way that we've done sex education in schools and respectful relationship stuff in schools. We just don't talk to one person. We talk to everybody about it, and so that everybody can be aware of the issues. So that's on an individual level, but also as a community and a society, we need to make sure that the banks, that the telcos, that the real estate agents, that the car yards, that the high purchase places trying to sell you a TV also are aware of the fact that somebody might be signing up to something that they've been actually pressured into, and that might not be that great for them. So everybody at every level has a responsibility to dealing with this issue, even government.
Mm. Yes, I think that makes so much sense. So that's pretty much it for me, but I do want to just open up the floor if there's anything else that you wanted to add, anything to do maybe with your research or any anecdotal stories or any other bits of information that you feel would be relevant to our audience who are particularly millennials.
Yes, so I've been working with young people now for the last 5 years, and we've been working on a project to develop an online toolkit so that young people can have more conversations about kind of like the big money moments in their relationships. We found that these financial issues for young people really came to the fore when they moved in together. And young people are more likely to move in together now than they did kind of decades ago, when it was kind of a bit more of a big deal, right? And so it's almost this point where we kind of like calling it, sliding into cohabitation, where it's like you started dating, they stayed over one night, and before you know it, we were living together, right? And so those things are happening without people having conversations about, okay, well, how are we going to manage the rent? How are we going to split the bills? Who's going to go on the lease? How are we going to sort of, all these boring conversations that you need to have. And then there were other aspects that we thought were important for young people that involved money and potential for conflict. So it was things like, going on a holiday together. What are some of the things that you need to think about or discuss with your partner to make sure, A, you have a great time, and B, you're not left with this incredible credit card debt when you get back that takes you 6 months to pay off. Getting a pet is also a thing that a lot of young people like to do together, but there's a lot of issues that need to be sorted out around that. And we're launching that website next month. So we're hoping that that's going to be something it's got a bit of a quiz in there that looks at people's, money values, their style with money, what money means to them, and get young people to have these conversations. It's not as exciting to, when you're planning your holiday, think about all the great things that you're going to do, but to also talk about, well, what is it that you can afford and what can I afford, and what's the best way to save for this, and make those plans. So I think that's really important in terms of, you've got that whole spectrum, you've got to deal with it, and there's a lot of services and support to help people who are in that situation and to get them out of that situation and to resolve those financial issues. But we also need to change, what are our social norms and expectations around love and money, not just as an individual. So not just fix up my money skills or fix up your money skills, but that we both know how to use our skills together to meet our relationship goals as well as our kind of individual goals, or keep our individual goals safe as well.
For sure. Do you have a name for the website at all yet?
Yeah, it's called You Me Money, You Me and Money, and .org.au, and that'll be launched next month. So that's been a collaborative project with YLab, which is part of the Foundation for Young Australians, and Today Design, which is a design dev company in Fitzroy, Victoria. And it was funded by the Extra Foundation, which supports initiatives and programs that try and improve people's financial capability. Because at the end of the day, you just want people to be able to enjoy their lives. And unfortunately, the reality of that is money is a big factor in being able to, enjoy your life, live a life that's comfortable, and be able to do the things that you want to do. And hopefully with a great, awesome person as well.
For sure. Okay, well, that's awesome. I think that'll be a great tool for young people. I certainly wish that I had that kind of access to resources when I was still at school. I feel like I adopted a lot of my behaviors from what was modeled to me from my parents and my siblings and my friends, which fortunately was fairly healthy.
Yeah.
But I definitely think that I can also see some negative behaviors in some of my friends who maybe haven't had that same type of role model in their lives, which is sad, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's true. And I found in my interviews with young people that they were often more willing to talk about sex and other issues in their relationship with their friends, but not the money stuff. There was still a lot more shame and embarrassment about, I feel like he's just using me for my money, and they don't want to kind of bring that out. But that's, yeah, indeed the way we've all been brought up in terms of talking about money and those kinds of issues can, in a way make or break us. So you kind of need these other circuit breakers, and schools and universities are a great place to start that kind of, new conversations about money, but in particular, managing money in a relationship.
Well, it's been so lovely getting the opportunity to talk to you. I think I'm ready to end the call. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think I've said enough. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for giving us all your wonderful insights. I thought that was great.
Thank you.